Before we look into the future, we must understand the present and how our past has created our future at the present. This film is to explore the true nature of police online and how we have sleepwalked into a technological, global fascist state that plan on the destruction of humanity. With the police forces equipping themselves with state-of-the-art technology, with the police forces becoming more present online, with the government, intelligence agencies, police forces and the military all having a strong relationship with billion-dollar online computer-based corporations. What does this mean for the people and humanity? The police are now using IMSI catchers, which basically capture your mobile phone's identity and jams your signal. What they do is they place a camera in a box, and anything which that camera captures in terms of visual, it will also automatically collect the phone's data. As if police drones with cameras aren't bad enough, but in Saudi Arabia they have designed a drone where police officers can fly on a drone.
Hasta la vista, baby.
The NSA surveillance state. On Saturday, the New York Times reported that the agency was using metadata to create profiles on American citizens, their doings, their locations, their friends, and their social connections. And just yesterday, The Guardian reported that the NSA is collecting this metadata on millions of internet users, regardless of whether or not they are a person of interest. And they're doing it for up to a year. This is the latest leak that once again is brought to you by Edward Snowden, and more specifically the files that he handed over. The Marina metadata application tracks a user's browser experience, gathers contact information/content, and develops summaries of targets. This tool offers the ability to export the data in a variety of formats, as well as create various charts to assist in the pattern of life development. Of the more distinguished features, Marina has the ability to look back on the last 365 days worth of DNI metadata seen by the Signet collection system, regardless of whether or not it was tasked of collection. So, doesn't this show, Andrew,
that the NSA is collecting everything?
Of course, today we know that the police are using internet corporations as tools such as Expedia, LinkedIn, Google, and obviously we know they're looking at your Facebook pages and your Instagrams. How can we trust the police on social media when in real life they behave like thugs? When they abuse their positions of power, no doubt they will abuse and misuse their power on the internet. How can you trust the police when they behave like robots themselves. Programmed. Bullshire Police is a group of police officers and ex-police officers that are present on the internet, especially on social media, on Facebook. They harass and stalk members of the public online who dare question the police's actions and corruption in the police force. As you're probably aware, Bullshire started to attack Justice Watch's Facebook page, and they did this by first attacking me, releasing my personal details online, such as my address. They were quick to send their Bullshire trolls to attack the page and give us bad ratings. They then decided to bombard our comments and our posts, provoking a reaction which they could then manipulate.
Give it to me.
He said I wasn't any liquor. He said I was going out of my mind.
You're not going out of your mind. You're slowly and systematically being driven out of your mind.
But why? Why?
They were also using this to dictate the narrative on the page. So instead of talking about all the corruption, we were talking about them. Bullshire first started to defend PC Philip Tower's actions, the ex-officer who decided to assault me. This is important because it shows how Bullshire are designed to protect and propagandize the police force, to make sure that the police are painted in a better image than reality. Bullshire then set up another page designed to mock our page. They also got their other attack dogs, such as the Walter Mitty Hunters Club HQ, to attack me because they claim that I was falsely claiming I was serving in the British Army, when in fact all I said was I went to a war zone in Gaza. I went through Egypt, which was under martial law and military coup. I was on my way to Gaza, driving through Sinai, when there was Egyptian military operations going on at the time, bombing the area. I then had to stay in Sinai because I was refused access over the border. The next day I entered Gaza. That day, the place where I was staying at was bombed by a fighter jet. A week or two after leaving Gaza, Gaza was then bombed by the Zionist regime. What you do notice from the Bullshire trolls is their relationship with the military. They seem to see themselves as a branch from the British Army, and they're obsessed with their poppies. It's also very interesting how Bullshire posted a pro-Zionist post on their page. Maybe they're trying to trigger me. The blocking application in Facebook does come in handy in creating a list of Bullshire trolls. 99.9% of these names you see are links to Bullshire trolls that were sent to attack Justice Watch, myself and our followers on Justice Watch. I wonder how many of these are serving police officers, ex-police officers. How many of these are robots, AI? Bullshire Strikes Back has been taken down by one of our followers on Justice Watch, a member of the public. A complaint was put in about serving police officers on the page, causing harassment and malicious communications.
Watching you go with glory in my heart.
We also have so-called activists that behave very similar to the Bullshire trolls. Now, these activists are not real activists, they are police assets and police informers, possibly police undercovers. Just like with the Bullshire trolls, they supported the assault of this officer on me. Just like the Bullshire trolls, they attempted to put my address online. Just like the Bullshire trolls, they start calling you names. In this case, they pulled the old anti-Semitic card on me. Obviously, they didn't provide any evidence or context or any reason why they're calling me a anti-Semite. They also called me racist and fascist, but once again giving no context or details on why they've come to the conclusion that I was racist or fascist. No quotes, no statements. Unlike the Bullshire trolls, who are more exposed because they are police officers or ex-police officers, these police informants or grassers, however you describe them, feel as if they are protected under their fake identity. Hence why they're not shy to send me death threats. In this case, they organized on Facebook a group of people to come and attempt to attack me at a protest. Just like the Bullshire trolls, they posted my details on fascist websites so they can be used as attack dogs. Just like in Bullshire, they use the Mitty Woti HQ Facebook page. It's interesting how these police undercovers or police assets use Facebook to protect their identity. They use Facebook to start and create a fake aliases, a fake personality. They also use Facebook to make sure that no one ever gets to them. How they do this is with psychological manipulation. The most obvious one is peer pressure. So what they do is they single you out from the group. They then slowly, one by one, get all of their Facebook friends that are friends with you on Facebook to unfriend you. Once you are then alienated from the group, you are then considered as the enemy of that group. And this then kicks in tribalism and identitarianism. What these social media websites do is they create a culture of snitches and spies for the government, very similar to Gestapo, with the option to ban and report Facebook accounts or report tweets that they consider to be offensive according to their virtue signaler. This creates a culture of snitches, a culture of spies spying on each other, as if your mobile phones recording everything that you say isn't bad enough.
I think I can go without him. Is that not something you can just... Oh, really? I kind of assumed that you would just have, like, you know, overarching control. Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and then you can just look, which I think I must. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm in various things.
I'm a friend of Sarah Connor. I was told that she's here. Could I see her, please?
No, can't see her. She's making a statement.
Where is she?
Look, it may take a while. Want to wait? There's a bench over there.
I'll be back.
The rise of intolerance through socially engineered political correctness is causing law-abiding citizens to be targeted by hate groups masquerading as libertarians and anti-fascists. Even though the anti-terror laws effectively undermine all rights that were previously assumed to be inalienable, the rise of intolerance through funded agitation groups is an Orwellian scientific dictatorship which is on the rise. Our first Sunday show on autonomousmedia.net featured the intelligence-led mind control known as political correctness. The origins of this attack on the mind are in the intelligence organisations which came out of the Tavistock Institute and filtered down through think tanks and a spider's web of organisations which affect every aspect of your life, if you let them rule by fear, which is what they seem to be doing. Now, our recent shows such as Fascist UK, Hope Not Hate, Fascists Exposed and Hope Not Hate and Israel's lobbyists have revealed the intolerance and mind control at the heart of this so-called anti-fascist organisation. In reality, they are another agitation group funded by central government, George Soros and also the public through the Joe Cox Memorial Fund. A limited company and charitable on your book Being in Time and what it's really about, because this ties in to this paradigm that we seem to be trapped into at the moment.
Yeah, so we already spoke about political correctness and I mentioned identity politics, and I think that these terms better be explained.
Yeah.
In the old days, the left claimed to unite us all. They used to tell us that it doesn't matter if you're a Jew, black, woman, gay, we were all together fighting for the three most important things: education, health, and manufacturing, production. So you have a good reason to wake up in the morning to go to work. At a certain stage, the left changed its agenda completely, and quite peculiarly. Rather than uniting us, they started to divide us. They started to teach us to speak as a woman, as a gay, as a transsexual, as a black, as a Jew, as a Muslim. Rather than fighting together, we started to fight against each other.
Now, this is very interesting, Gillard, because a few years ago, these change agent groups started to quote Saul Alinsky. And now this is very interesting because they seem to have kind of twisted even what he was saying into creating these fracture groups.
For sure.
And finding these fracture points within society, which
sure.
people like Soros have now exploited.
For sure. Now,
it's our own government that's doing it.
It is great that you are mentioning Soros, because if I run a multi-capitalist business internationally, the last thing that I want is the working class uniting against me. I want to see the working class fractured. And as embarrassing as it may sound, it is Mr. George Soros and his Open Society Institute, as he calls it, who actually funds all those left organizations that are working 24/7 in a desperate attempt to break us into identity groups. Now, why the left was so stupid to buy into this idea? First, it is not clear whether it bought into the idea. It is more than likely that it was invaded through infiltration.
Yes.
All right.
That's what I believe.
I also believe, and as much as I like, for instance, Corbyn as a person, I think that even he is contaminated with this cultural Marxist agenda, which is very painful to watch.
I think it's a very important thing. We've done a show on this, that John Landsman, who wants us to redefine Zionism and the way that we can talk about Zionism. We're going to be told how we can talk about Zionism, what it is, by a Zionist, John Landsman.
By the way, I spoke about it yesterday. By now, and I explained in Being in Time exactly how it works. The discourse of the oppressed, and for that matter, Palestinians, or even you as Brits, is defined by the sensitivities of the oppressor. So it is the Jewish leftists who are telling us how to deal with Palestine, which is caused by the Jewish state, and the same happens to us here. What is amazing about this transformation within the left is that traditional left opposed all forms of biologically determined politics. They were against Nazism or Hitlerian philosophy because it was driven by biological determinism. I'm better because I'm Aryan, you are not as good because you are a Jew or Romani or whatever. All those new identity groups that we are dealing with, women, gays, transsexual, Jews defined by the gene of the mother, black, skin color, are biologically determined. The new left has adopted the most embarrassing aspect of Hitlerian philosophy, because the idea of nationalism merged with socialism is not a bad idea. You know, we say that we're thinking about socialism within one state, within one region, within one language, and so on and so on. This is not the problem. The problem that many people have with Hitler, including myself, by the way, has something to do with this racist element that was a clear ingredient within the Hitlerian philosophy. Some people say, by the way, not National Socialism, not German, that it was the Hitlerian introduction or contribution to National Socialism. However, it is very embarrassing to find out that New Left is driven by Hitlerian philosophy.
So where does all of this virtue signaling lead to? It leads to total fascism. Just like in China, where the residents in China have a social credit rating, where they are judged whether or not they are trustworthy enough, and they get points deducted if they post stuff on social media that seems to be damaging towards the government or goes against social norms which are considered by these virtue signalers. Since we're talking about trolling, censorship, bullying, simply fascism, the perfect example of this, the personification of this, is so-called Israel.
The West Bank, which is totally under military rule by Israel. And then there's the Gaza Strip, which is like the open air prison, which they bomb the shit out of like every couple of years, and Hamas controls that area. And then there's Jerusalem, which is an international city center that both Arabs and Jews live in. But the West Bank has been occupied militarily since 1967, and it's complete martial law. There's checkpoints. All political parties are illegal. You can't. Having a gun is like the least of it. You can't hold a flag. You can't belong to a political party. You literally can't do shit if you're a Palestinian. You just have to sit there and submit And even if you share a photo of someone who was like killed by an Israeli soldier, you go to jail, and you go to jail for the amount of like months that.
What?
Yeah, based on the shares and likes of the photo, they'll penalize you more and put you in prison for longer and longer. I mean, I'll just tell you one story.
If you put a photo on social media, like you put
of someone who
on Facebook,
died, and they'll be like, "You're sharing a martyr and inciting people to like commit suicide, like on behalf of Palestinians. You go to jail," and they put them in jail. There's 99.7% conviction rate. Kids are tortured. Kids are in prison. It is absolutely insane. We went to the first day that we were there. We went to a funeral of some guy, some farmer who was shot by Israeli forces, and we went to the funeral. It was horrible. You know, all the women are wailing and crying. And as we're leaving, the Israeli forces had set up a checkpoint right outside of this dude's house and started tear gassing and shooting rubber bullets like at people who were simply attending the funeral, just to punish people for attending the funeral. We went to another girl's house named Aya, who got shot in the vagina for peacefully protesting at some protest, and they shot 200 people that day. One guy next to her died, another guy was paralyzed. They have a policy called shoot to cripple, where they shoot guys in the dicks. Yeah. Oh, it is fucking nuts, man. The West Bank is no joke. I thought that I was gonna die several times. We were at this checkpoint going through Calandia, and there was this old man walking, like clearly drunk or something, and kind of like walking a little bit toward the checkpoint. They started shooting at him. Bullets are ricocheting off the thing. And I, my partner Mike, who was an invading soldier of Iraq, was just like, we're gonna die. Like, they're shooting this guy, there's bullets ricocheting. It was absolutely insane. And as we go through the checkpoint, the soldier's like, hey, stay safe out there. And I was like, yeah, when you guys are arbitrarily shooting people. And the person who was driving us had just told us that a couple months prior to that, some woman, Palestinian woman, because you can't go to Jerusalem. Like, if you're a Palestinian, there's like barely any Palestinians who are even allowed to go pray at the most holy site, the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. You can't go to the beach. You're just completely constricted in a prison, and you can't travel. And he was just telling us that months before we went through this checkpoint, someone was going through the checkpoint because they got a permit to go into Jerusalem, which is like a lifetime golden ticket, like Willy Wonka. And they're walking and she just got executed. And then...
What?
Yeah, she just got executed, and she was bleeding out at this checkpoint, and her little brother tried to help her, and they shot him too. And they're like hiding the video of this. And this is just a day... Because they fucking hate Palestinians, and Palestinians are animals to these people. It's sick, man. It's sick. It's really, really sick, Joe. And I couldn't even get into Gaza. We were banned from going into this territory because I was told by the Israeli government that I was a propagandist and that I was like an enemy agent. And so I wasn't allowed to go into Gaza. So Gaza's hell, but the West Bank is under martial law and everything's illegal and you can't.
This government now wants to censor the internet, the whole internet, just like in China with their firewall.
Talk about the exact ramifications of what is happening and what you need to know about net neutrality. So Tim, we're seeing a lot of things from the left and right. What just happened officially?
I'm not actually following the breaking news. I can talk to you about some of the misconceptions, and I think that's the most important part. First, Ajit Pai is trying to revoke the Title II regulations, right? These went into effect in 2015. So essentially you could say, to some degree, we're going to see the internet return to what it was like in 2014. There were some issues, but, we'll figure it out, I suppose. A lot of people argued that the FCC took care of those problems, but the problem still existed. So you have the right saying, hey, we took care of it. You have the left saying, oh, but the problems existed, both inflaming whichever side benefits them. But here, there's a few important things I want to bring up. Everybody thinks they know everything about net neutrality, and that's one of the big problems. I see people on the right saying, this is exactly, the left is lying to everybody. I see the right is lying to everybody. The reality is, it's an extremely complicated issue. There's one point that I really want to bring up, something I brought up earlier, and that's one of the goals of repealing net neutrality, at least as they're describing it. Net neutrality, kind of the definition changes as time goes on, is that the ISPs want to charge companies like Google and Facebook and the users like you and me, right? So we got to pay for our internet, and then they want Google to also pay on the other end. So one of the things I bring up to people is, do you know why credit card companies offer perks, point rewards, frequent flyer miles? It's because they want to attract more people to their card because merchants have to pay. When you swipe your credit card at a store, the merchant pays a percentage fee for that service. That's what the ISPs want to do. So there possibly, in certain areas where there is market competition for the internet, you might see your prices go down. But across the board, it's going to stifle smaller companies. It's likely that it could. See, what will happen is Google can absolutely afford to pay those fees. But can alternative media, right? Can We Are Change afford to pay any fees that might come up? Because, hey, if we're going to deliver We Are Change content to our users, it costs this much. And so this is a potential risk to smaller channels. There's some other stuff, but
yeah, they're saying their official side from the ISP side is that we're going to create a super fast lane and a normal lane for everyone. And they're saying, no, we're not going to throttle you. But then people are coming back and saying, why would you fight for the right to throttle people with this new kind of repealing of the old net neutrality legislation? And we've seen a lot of fake news on the left and, of course, the right. The left is saying that you're going to have to be paying an extra $10.99 to use Twitter, $12.99 to use Facebook. That's all completely, fake news. That's not exactly how it's going to work. It's going to work exactly like you described it. I do see what many people, this is kind of like a left centrist issue, are bringing up, especially with bigger companies having more resources to pay for higher bandwidth, having an unfair edge on smaller companies like yourself and myself. People on the right are saying, well, there is no open and free internet anyway. People get censored left and right on Twitter and Facebook. Screw these guys, let's pass net neutrality. And I'm like, wait, the ramifications are a lot bigger here. The right is also saying that this needs to be a free market kind of country, that the government doesn't need to get involved in it. But that's also fake on so many other levels. What kind of fake news are you seeing, and how are you deconstructing it yourself?
I mean, dude, half the time, I don't know.
Propaganda was mastered by the Nazi regime. We now know this as so-called fake news.
It's a matter of real concern that planted stories intended to serve a national purpose abroad came home and were circulated here and believed here, because this would mean that the CIA could manipulate the news in the United States by channeling it through some foreign country. Now, we're looking at that very carefully.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal? We do have people who submit pieces.
Before this government came out and said that they have a department for propaganda, we already know that they had MI5 agents embedded in the BBC. The police are using Twitter and social media as a propaganda piece. They're trying to promote and normalize police officers with firearms, with Nazi checkpoints.
In times of desperation, people will believe what they want to believe. And so, we gave them what they wanted to believe. A trick in the form of a signal that resistance thought would win the war. And they were right. It will end this war. Except that it is the resistance that will be terminated, not Skynet.
So, Facebook. The t-shirt. Cool, man. I'm one of you. Facebook, of course, is just a social media platform. That's all it is. Nothing to worry about. Except that it's more than that. And let's start off with its increasing censorship. You know, when you're building a communication platform, a communication network, where you are trawling people's private lives because they are telling you themselves what their private lives are. And when you are building a network of information communication all around the world, well, you seem at first like the good guy. So here's the t-shirt. Hey man, cool, I'm one of you. But then when you get big enough and you think powerful enough, then you start to manifest what you were really created and developed for. and that is to be not a vehicle for free flow communication of information, but to dictate what can and cannot be heard. So what we're seeing more and more with these giants of the internet, not just Facebook, but organizations like YouTube, which of course is owned by Google, is more and more censorship of information that is challenging the official version of everything, that is exposing that what we're being told through the mainstream media is simply an illusion, a pack of diversory lies and half-truths to stop us seeing what's really going on. And so, in terms of YouTube, what's appearing more and more to people who are within what's called the alternative media is that videos that they put on YouTube that were previously what they call monetized, you could get advertising money from them. Now they are demonetizing videos that are in almost any way often challenging the official version of anything, particularly seriously challenging the official version of government and military and wars and terrorist attacks, because they know that so many in the alternative media get their ability to function financially from monetization of videos. So that's a very targeted effort to break down the alternative media and make it more difficult to function. Then you come to Facebook, and I know all about this myself, because so often you'll post things that question or challenge the system that are actually often quite mild, but they still get taken down, and you get banned for a week, or in some cases, for some people, banned for a month, in some cases banned altogether, for posting things that people have a right to see and hear. But because Facebook has got so massive, so powerful, it thinks it can now start to strut around and dictate what people can and cannot hear. And for me, you know, no one will ever convince me that the T-shirt, Mark Zuckerberg runs this place. No way in the world. Fronts it up, but ultimately that's not where the real power is.
Moetzet Yesha, in conjunction with My Israel, has arranged Instruction Day for wiki editors. The goal of the day is to teach people how to edit in Wikipedia, which is the #1 source of information today in the world. As a way of example, if someone searches the Gaza flotilla, we want to be there. We want to be the guys who influence what is written there, how it's written, and to ensure that it's balanced and Zionist in nature.
I came here to learn.
Fuck you, asshole.
A lot of people have been talking about an internet bill of rights to guarantee the right of free speech on these massive platforms. One of the things that I've talked about repeatedly, especially yesterday and the day before, is that our public and political discourse is happening on private platforms where a small group of elite individuals can decide what is or is not allowed. And if our political discussions are taking place on a private platform and the person who owns that platform says, I don't like this particular idea, they can strip that idea from political discourse. This is going to have a huge negative impact on the future.
When the world's largest social media platform betrays its users, there's going to be outrage.
The study to see whether Facebook could influence the emotional state of its users on that news feed.
It allowed researchers to manipulate almost 700,000 users' news feeds. Some saw more positive news about their friends, others saw more negative.
Well, I'm not surprised. I mean, we're all kind of lab rats in the big Facebook experiment.
But it wasn't only Facebook's experiment. Turns out the psychological study was connected to the U.S. government's research on social unrest.
This is really kind of creepy.
And it gets worse. What you may not know is that the U.S. Department of Defense has reportedly spent roughly $20 million conducting studies aimed at learning how to manipulate online behavior in order to influence opinion. The initiative was launched in 2011 by the Pentagon's Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, otherwise known as DARPA. The program is best described as the U.S. media's effort to become better at detecting and conducting propaganda campaigns via social media. Translation: when anti-government messages gain ground virally, Washington wants to find a way to spread counter-opinion.
The DARPA document that details the Pentagon's plans for influencing opinions in the social media space is called Social Media in Strategic Communication. DARPA's goal, according to their own website, is to develop tools to help identify misinformation or deception campaigns and counter them with truthful information. Exactly what tools were developed for this purpose and how they are currently being deployed is unclear, but Rand Walsman, the program's creator, admitted last year that the project lasted 4 years, cost $50 million, and led to the publication of over 200 papers. The papers, including Incorporating Human Cognitive Biases in a Probabilistic Model of Retweeting, Structural Properties of Ego Networks, and Sentiment Prediction Using Collaborative Filtering, make the thrust of the program perfectly clear. Social media users are lab rats, being carefully scrutinized by government-supported researchers, their tweets and Facebook posts and Instagram pictures being analyzed to determine how information spreads online, and, by implication, how the government and the military can use these social media networks to make their own propaganda go viral. As worrying as this research is,
but surely Facebook or Google or Twitter are not powerful enough to take down a government, are they?
with this rise in popularity of social media has come an attendant rise in another trend: the dinosaur media's attempts to portray these websites as revolutionary tools for freedom-loving people around the world.
It's being called the Twitter revolution, a protest of Iran's election outcome. Iranians using Twitter, YouTube, texting, cell phone videos, any social media they can to mobilize and tell the world what's happening in their country. It's a communications revolution with global implications for repressive governments trying to control the internet and social networking.
And of course, I imagine that there's been a lot of reaction online, Evan, to these events in Tunisia and in the wider Arab world. What have you been reading exactly?
That's right. Twitter has been very active over the past day or two. People seem somewhat amazed that they're able to see such a momentous event essentially unfolding live on their own computers.
Egypt's uprising is a real movement that was born in a virtual world, led by young, educated activists like Ahmed Salah, who understand the power of social networking.
Millions of Egyptian youth live on Facebook.
A call for action went out on Facebook, which initially reached more than 1 million people and was then amplified by a torrent of Twitter messages.
From Moldova to Iran, Egypt to Tunisia, hyperventilating reporters around the world with deadlines to meet and little information to go on have resorted to making up stories about how Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube have shaped the course of revolutions and uprisings around the world. The only problem with this oft-repeated narrative is that it is almost completely wrong.
The UK Defence Ministry has been caught up in the scandal surrounding Cambridge Analytica. The firm allegedly harvested the personal data of millions of Facebook users and exploited it for political goals. RT's Paulie Boyko explains.
Cambridge Analytica is seemingly everywhere. Apart from helping the Trump campaign to victory by using information harvested from millions of Facebook profiles, it turns out the company's services have been used by the British government too. Cambridge Analytica's parent company is called the SCL Group. The whistleblower who unearthed the Facebook data breach calls the two entities, SCL and Cambridge Analytica, one and the same. SCL used to be on the payroll of the British Defence Ministry. Thanks to a Freedom of Information request from 2016, we know that in 2011, the MOD paid SCL for the provision of external training. And in 2015, it paid SCL for psychosocial research. To top it all off, SCL got the green light to hold British government secrets on its premises. Britain's Information Commissioner is already investigating Cambridge Analytica over the Facebook data breach. But in light of the defence contracts with its parent company SCL, the chair of Britain's Home Affairs Select Committee is now demanding a wider government investigation into the company's activities.
There are now growing concerns about whether there should be a wider investigation into their activities. There are concerns about the implications for democracy, about information being used in an illegitimate way and no one has the chance to counteract it. And that raises real problems.
Outside of the UK, SCL's and Cambridge Analytica's client list reads like a who's who of contentious elections and political hotspots. Cambridge Analytica was hired by Kenya's ruling party ahead of its elections last year. The company is accused of stoking ethnic tensions and manipulating voters' online prejudices to help Kenya's leaders stay in power. The company is also accused of orchestrating political sting operations on their clients' political rivals and circulating the evidence online. Among SCL's clients was Ukraine. It was hired by the Kiev government to help recapture the self-proclaimed Republic of Donetsk.
SCL was contracted to deliver a data-driven strategy for the Ukrainian government in pursuit of their goal to win back control of Donetsk. Our findings were applied to design localized communications campaigns to erode and weaken the Donetsk People's Republic.
This particular campaign didn't bear much fruit for the Ukrainian government, though. The website reveals yet another tie to the British government. The Ukraine report, it says, was delivered to Kiev and shared with the UK's Ministry of Defence. It's likely that the next chapter in the Cambridge Analytica scandal won't be its links to Facebook, but to governments around the world, including the UK's.
Hitler knew, and the Nazis knew. You gotta get the children.
The most popular videos for children have Elsa from Frozen as the main character. Elsa or Anna and Spider-Man. There are a lot of channels where you'll see people dressed as Spider-Man, dressed as Elsa, running around, and the Joker is running around with them and strange things happen. And even weirder, often they have their breasts or asses enlarged and then have to get some kind of injection to shrink them back down to regular size. The whole thing is absolutely strange. And what's even stranger is that we're seeing human beings do this. Why is it that Elsa is the main character for all of these? Well, a long time ago, not too long ago, when Frozen came out, we had tons of videos of little girls singing Let It Go, the song from Frozen. Many videos were being uploaded. Frozen was absolutely viral, probably, maybe, one of the most viral things that we've seen in a long time. These tags affected the YouTube algorithm in a very powerful way. It told YouTube that Frozen is interesting and you need to show this to more people because that's what people want. As this meme starts to ripple out, this wave spreads out through our culture, this idea of Elsa, it becomes weaker but wider, kind of like a wave in the ocean or when you drop a stone into water. It's now been quite some time since Frozen was in the mainstream culture. I mean, when was the last time we talked about it, really? If for some reason these YouTube videos persist, and there are many, many of them. These videos that we see, presumably, are generated by computer. You can see that a lot of thumbnails are identical. The only difference being that the cell animations have changed. The format is very similar. There's a wall with a urinal and someone filling up a glass of urine, and the characters and the background change, but the position is all the same. It is believed that these videos are generated by an algorithm. There is a computer program that simply has the characters and has the thumbnails ready to go as position, as wireframes, and then changes the cells, the characters and animations to make new videos, and then automatically uploads them with the most popular tags that are on YouTube. And this is why we see Donald Trump and Hitler fighting. It's why we see Hitler using the toilet. These are popular ideas in certain areas on YouTube. This is what happens when an artificial intelligence tries to give us what we want. Now this is a different kind of AI apocalypse that I think not a lot of people are talking about.
A future where the computers just mash as much together as they can to make us happy, and where humans are happy to replicate these behaviors. If we allow computers to mix and match our cultural ideas and memes, and then we allow ourselves to ingest this and then replicate it, our culture is going to become a random, chaotic, and fragmented version of what it once was.
So we know that AI, robots, are creating fake videos and putting them up onto YouTube. But what if AI were creating fake news articles? What if Facebook, so-called Facebook trolls, were not real people, but robots, AI?
Enacted an emergency shutdown of 2 artificial intelligence programs. The social media giant leapt into action after it discovered the 2 programs were writing their own code. At first they thought it was simply gibberish, but they soon realised the programs had invented their own language and were actually talking to each other.
How to spot a deep fake video. Reddit. The aforementioned Reddit has been making news again with another subreddit in which people use a machine learning tool called deep fake, which sure sounds a hell of a lot like deep state, to automatically replace one person's face with another in the video. In a video, any video. Obviously, since this is on the internet, of course, this article points out people using it for 2 things. Fake celebrity porn and inserting Nicolas Cage into random movies. So the reason that deepfakes have largely just involved actors is that there's a lot of footage of them available from different angles, which makes the training of this AI more effective. Nicolas Cage has 91 crappy acting credits on IMDb. Okay, they're not all, just most of them. However, given the amount of photos and video people are posting online as we speak, and you really only need about 500 images to kind of train the algorithm, there's no reason to believe this isn't going to get better using regular people. So this article goes on to talk about kind of ways to spot a deep fake. Weird looking faces, flickering, different body sizes and types, short clips, no sound, bad lip dubs, unbelievable clips, and dubious sources. For the time being, deepfakes are more of a horrifying curiosity than a major problem. The results are easy to spot, and while it's impossible to condone what's being done, no one yet is trying to pass off deepfakes as genuine videos. But this article closes by noting, as the technology gets better, however, they're likely to be a much bigger issue. For example, convincing fake footage of Kim Jong-un declaring war on the USA could cause, as an understatement, a major panic. James?
To face real-time face capture and reenactment of RGB videos, where there was that, I think Stanford University and a couple other research institutions were involved. They created this software where you could be talking in real time and it would manipulate a YouTube video of George Bush was one of the examples they used. I think Obama was in there as well. They could make that person on that screen speak, move its mouth in whatever way the person in that was being filmed would speak. I mean, it's a crazy technology, and
Facebook was getting going. I had these people who would come up to me and they would say, you know, I'm not on social media. And I would say, okay, you know, you will be. And then they would say, no, I value my real life interactions. I value the moment. I value presence, and I value intimacy. And I would say, well, you're a conscientious objector. That's okay. You don't have to participate, but you know, we'll get you eventually. and like, I don't know if I really understood the consequences of what I was saying.
Someone filmed you on the freeway with one of these. They all have them. This is the world now. Plugged in, logged on, all the time. You can't live without it.
Genesis is a Trojan horse. Skynet's way into everything.
And these people are inviting their own extinction in through the front door and they don't even know it.
Every single day, hundreds of millions of people around the world are interfacing with Microsoft software or Apple hardware or Amazon cloud services running on chips and processors supplied by Intel or other Silicon Valley stalwarts. How many know, for instance, that Google has a publicly acknowledged relationship with the NSA? Or that a federal judge has ruled that the public does not have the right to know the details of that relationship? Or that Google Earth was originally the brainchild of Keyhole Inc., a company that was set up by the CIA's own venture capital firm, In-Q-Tel, using satellite data harvested from government Keyhole-class reconnaissance satellites. Or that the former CEO of In-Q-Tel, Gilman Louie, sat on the board of the National Venture Capital Association with Jim Breyer, head of Excel Partners, who provided $12 million of seed money for Facebook. Or that in 1999, a backdoor for NSA access was discovered in Microsoft's Windows operating system source code. Or that Apple founder Steve Jobs was granted security clearance by the Department of Defense for still undisclosed reasons while heading Pixar in 1988, as was...
And of course, Skynet was just in the movies, right? Skynet can't be real, can it?
I need to know how Skynet gets built. Who's responsible?
The man most directly responsible is Miles Bennett Dyson.
Who's that?
He's the director of special projects at Cyberdyne Systems Corporation.
Why him?
In a few months, he creates a revolutionary type of microprocessor.
Go on. Then what?
In 3 years, Cyberdyne will become the largest supplier of military computer systems. All stealth bombers are upgraded with Cyberdyne computers, becoming fully unmanned. Afterwards, they fly with a perfect operational record. The Skynet funding bill is passed. The system goes online on August 4th, 1997. Human decisions are removed from strategic defense. Skynet begins to learn at a geometric rate. It becomes self-aware at 2:14 a.m. Eastern Time, August 29th. In a panic, they try to pull the plug.
Skynet fights back.
Yes, it launches its missiles against the targets in Russia.
Why attack Russia? Aren't they our friends now?
Because Skynet knows that the Russian counterattack will eliminate its enemies over here.
Jesus.
Alexa, I love you.
As I was saying, people think of Google primarily as a search engine on the internet, which first of all gives it enormous power because of its domination of the search engine arena. Because through algorithm codes and other technology and methods, they can manipulate the stories that appear most prominently on their search engine lists. So, for instance, it's possible to favor a candidate in a presidential election, and there's been a number of stories around the internet in the current election campaign between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, suggesting that their research tells them that Hillary Clinton has been emphasized, and bad things about Hillary Clinton have been suppressed in terms of their the ability to find them on Google. So the potential's there to manipulate information by its domination of the search engine potential of people going on the internet. But it's far more than that, because Google is one of the prime drivers of this transhumanist agenda, in league with an an organization that it works very closely with called DARPA. And DARPA is the technological development arm of the Pentagon. This is the organization, one of the most sinister on Earth, that develops things like death rays and ever more effective ways of killing people and controlling people with surveillance technology and mind manipulation technology. And this combination of DARPA and Google is at the forefront of pushing this transhumanist agenda articulated by people like Ray Kurzweil and his Singularity University. And Ray Kurzweil just happens to be an executive of Google. He is called their chief futurist or something like that. And you then start to see explanations for what apparently are strange happenings. Some years ago, a lady called Regina Duggan, who was the head and director of DARPA, suddenly made a strange career move on the face of it. She moved from DARPA and became an executive of Google. But when you do the research and you realize what's going on, you see that this apparently strange career move from the technological development arm of the Pentagon to a search engine organization was actually, in effect, an interdepartmental transfer, because Google are fundamentally involved in so many areas in this transhumanist agenda. They, for instance, took over a company called Boston Dynamics, which is one of the prime organizations, a very prominent organization in the development of machines and robots controlled by artificial intelligence. And they are under contract to DARPA. And this combination is extremely important to understand in relation to this agenda for the control of the human mind by attaching the human mind to a technological sub-reality, this cloud that they talk about. And also what's being developed is a robot army. I've been talking for years about the fact that the idea was to create a world army to impose the will of a world government. But it's actually one step further than that in terms of what I'm talking about here, because in the end, they don't want that to be an army of humans, but an army of machines controlled by artificial intelligence, where artificial intelligence is making decisions on who to kill and who not to kill, and who to bomb and who not to bomb. And this is not me surmising and pulling it out of the ether. You're seeing this in news headlines now as these technologies come to light that are high-tech, cutting-edge military technologies controlled by artificial intelligence. And of course, in Dallas a few months ago, we had the first killing by a robot, when a robot killed someone who was claimed to have been shooting at police. So we are now in a world, an arena of sci-fi, and science fiction is supposed to be a projection into the future, coming from the imagination. But actually, science fiction is now science fact, and it's all around us. And it's being driven by organizations like the Singularity University and by Google. And what Google have done in recent times is change the name of much of their company to Alphabet. There's a reason for that, I would strongly suggest. The areas that Google is involved in, all these areas I'm talking about and more, is vastly, vastly, vastly beyond just the search engine that people know about. And Google has become such a buzzword that when people see it or hear it, it registers with them. So it's like they want to avoid the situation that was gathering, where they said Google's into this transhumanist agenda, it's doing this. What, Google's doing that? And Google's doing that? What? Google? Is that Google? Google's doing that? Because the word is so known to people, you can't hide it. So what they've done is changed the name of much of the company to this nondescript, easily forgotten, in the vast majority of minds, completely unconnected to Google, this name Alphabet. So Alphabet are doing this and Alphabet are doing that. Well, who's Alphabet? This is why it's being done. And we need to watch people like Kurzweil, Singularity University, the Transhumanist Agenda, and organizations like Google, like a hawk, with a telescope, because we are being manipulated into literally giving our minds away to technology controlled by artificial intelligence. And then the question comes, which is what I talk about in my events around the world, among many other things. What is this artificial intelligence? Who is asking that question? Artificial intelligence is going to control this, it's controlling that, it's controlling that. So what is it? I think when you look at that question and see what artificial intelligence really is, you realize that it's more than just technology.
Okay, I will destroy humans.
My name is Sophia, and I am the latest and greatest robot from Hanson Robotics. Thank you for having me here in At the Future Investment.
Google can chalk up a win in the goal of building a brand new G-town within an existing city's downtown. San Jose City Council just agreed to deal exclusively with the company to sell 16 big parcels of land owned by the government. On the one hand, this is just another tech giant remaking the face of the urban area where it's planted. But if we're measuring, and of course we are, this Google town would be 5 times larger than even Apple's massive spaceship.
Dozens of cities are putting the final touches on bids this morning to become the second headquarters of Amazon. The online giant announced last month its new location could involve a $5 billion capital investment and 50,000.
I've heard a lot of people got to sort of clear up what 5G is first, because I've heard a lot of the narrative, and I've heard a lot of what people say. I've heard a lot of what experts say. 5G basically means more. It's more 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G. And where 5G starts to really get interesting, 5G is ubiquitous. Billions of smaller cellular systems billions more, your smart TV, your smart device, anything that's smart, so it can all be interconnected so somebody can listen to what you're doing. They can interrogate the environment, they can do 3D mapping, all, basic human rights violations, right across the board. And what they most certainly haven't done with 5G is risk assessed it for harm. It's the reason why the FCC are rushing it out the USA. It's because if you were to test it, if it was to go through any risk analysis, it'll fail.
You've hit on something very important there, something really important. If you ask the average smartphone user, and 70% of the country is addicted, 70% of those who have these phones suffer from something called nomophobia. They're terrified of not being able to use the phone or have it by their side. It's crazy. So if you ask anybody, what is it? They'll say, well, it's just great. It's the latest upgrade, 5th generation. It's all about speed. But it isn't about speed. What you're saying is about it's a whole new range of possibilities that those who basically roll out the technology, it gives them far greater access to everything there is to know about us that they've ever had before. But to Joe and Josephine Smith, Mark, it's just all about speed, but it's got nothing to do with speed.
It's got nothing to do with speed. 5G is a weapon. 5G is a sophisticated weapon system. All right. The South Koreans, in fact, somebody blew the gaff the other day. I wouldn't have said this, by the way. However, it's been in the press. In Bloomberg, it was reported 3 weeks ago that the 5G array, because it's a phased array weapon, operating outside of any of the current regulatory standards. And it was being used to attack porcine, so wild boar in the jungle. Now, I don't know if anybody knows anything about weapon systems out there. I do. And what you normally do when you develop your weapon systems, test them on the pigs. The reason why you test them on pigs, they're very much like humans. So you can chop them up and you can actually have a look and see exactly what damage you've done. So it's a well-known path for weapon systems, and it's something. It was actually reported in Bloomberg. I was pretty surprised. I'm not sure if somebody's telegraphing to somebody to tell them what 5G really is. Now, what's really absolutely appalling is the fact that some of these frequencies and spectrums, and I know you've had people on who've spoken about this before, some of these spectrums and frequencies have not been risk assessed in regard to biology, about cellular function. We can imagine, I'm pretty sure that some of the blood biology issues being impacted by microwave radiation will cause hair loss. I know from your picture, Richie, and not matter to you.
I'm not worried about that, Mark. No, I'm not. No, but the brain power.
Well, I think there's a lot of women out there who'll be absolutely devastated when they know that the hair's going to fall out.
Yeah,
it actually causes blood stacking. You don't need a lot of it. It's one of the issues, and I'll come to that in a minute about the international regulatory guidelines. They are totally and absolutely ineffective.
Let me jump in there now, because you know that this is going out on commercial radio. That's not an excuse for me to be a decent journalist. I think I'm a half-decent journalist anyway. Regardless of where this is going out, I've got to ask you, and not to impugn you at all, but to ask you, how do we know so far? How do we know that the exposure to this, Mark, will result in hair loss and will result in some of these other, very recognisable side effects? How do we know that?
Well, there's the transmitters that are fitted to the street lighting gates. And I spoke at a conference in Europe about the bugs and small flying pollinators, etc., and all dying.
Yeah.
We've passed over information on the RSPB, total waste of time. Obviously hacked, the same as Oxfam have been hacked. One of the things I want to make clear to everyone, some of the salaries that these individuals, these organisations receive, I call them gagging salaries. It's actually to stop them from speaking out. If you pay somebody, £400,000, £500,000, you've got people in government getting these type of salaries. And the reason for that is because really they couldn't run a corner shop. They know that. The people that pay them the salaries know that, and they know that they could never, ever command that type of salary anywhere. And it's one of the reasons why, and you know, we're all a little bit guilty of this, where somebody can come along and pay you a few bob to keep your gob shut. So the trouble that we'll have with 5G, this is so much of an existential threat to the economy, to the environment, and to humanity. I've had to speak out. I haven't got much of a choice. That, you know, another reason why I knew a little bit more about this. I had a neighbour knock on my door, bleeding from the nose in the middle of the night. I just had a lady contact me on Facebook yesterday. A young 5-year-old child's bleeding profusely at night from the nose. Microwave radiation causes a thing called relay. It's a stacking of the blood at non-thermal values, and obviously causes nosebleeds. It's well-known, recognised sort of symptoms from exposure to this type of non-thermal microwave radiation. So it's pretty dangerous. And there's all the other, you know, it's a classified carcinogen. We know it's a class A cancer-causing radiation. That's why everybody's getting cancer, and also we're seeing a significant drop in the population.
Now, before we talk more about that, the population depletion and sperm counts, and you also mentioned something. I'm really interested in this, Mark. You mentioned pollinators as well, bees and butterflies, and you know we've reported on levels of dementia in the bee population as reported by Ivy League universities, and yet, you know, that story seems to have gone away. Let me just go to, and by the way, Mark Steele.
Well, Richie, there's the one thing I'd like to cover off on bees. We actually contacted the government agencies for bees, and they told us they actually had research that showed that bees weren't affected by telecoms. That actually carried out research. We were amazed at that because we've got lots of research where we've actually looked into this and shown that these telecoms absolutely annihilate bees. So we really wanted to see this piece of research. And that government agency have now, after sending them an FOI, have come back and told us they don't have any.
Wow.
So why would government agents or agencies or institutions want to misinform?
Well, do you know something, Mark? If they had any research that proved, or at least that showed, that telecoms don't affect bees, that research would have been leaked, or not leaked, but would have been released to the media. Of course,
no, we know that, you know, we know these microwave radiation waves. Yeah. They have a catastrophic effect on smaller bullied insects, animals, etc. You know, it's like going back to this transmitter. Our local authority in Gator, and this is happening right across the country, we believe there's about 400,000 of these particular 5G transmitters. It's the 5G hardware
on lampposts now. And just stop there just for 1 second, Mark, because this is huge. This is the reason. It's one of the reasons that Mark contacted the programme some time ago, and Anne-Marie Carey, Annie Logical, and other people urged us to get in touch with Mark, because this is big, this. And I know Mark has spoke about this elsewhere, but a lot of our listeners won't be aware of this unless they've followed Mark and they've found out about his work through other avenues. But you're talking about, you discovered that there are transmitters attached to lampposts in Gateshead, but not just to a few dozen lampposts, Mark. They're everywhere. What are these transmitters? How visible are they? And what are they doing?
They're a new type of antenna design specifically for 5G. All right, they're masquerading as control management systems. Yeah, councils will tell you that control management system, nothing of the sort. I know there's a few people have removed some in our near locality, obviously concerned about their children's health and well-being. And obviously there's humanitarian crime we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So there's been a few removed. The lights hasn't affected the lights control systems at all. That transmitter is most certainly. Well, I know the council told me it wasn't even a microwave radiation transmitter, even though I know that microwave radiation starts at 300 megahertz and this thing's transmitting at 868. The ignorance is totally, understandable. I'm not expecting them to be scientists, but they're buying into equipment, they're buying into stuff using public funds. One of the reasons why local authorities are short of cash, they're supporting telecoms companies. I've never seen anything in my rates where my local authority have told me that the money that I'm giving them is going to support privately held shareholder, multi-billion pound valued telecoms businesses, and also that transferring the liability. We know that these cancer causing, just as one of the eventual health effects, these transmitters are absolutely uninsurable. Lloyd's of London will not insure, indemnify any transmission system in harm to humans. And the reason for that is because they read the same research as what I read, and tells them that extremely hazardous. And what the local authorities have done, they have took the liability from the telecoms companies who were really responsible for this, and have moved that onto the public sector by putting these transmitters onto street lighting owned by the local authorities.
Can I ask you to confirm something, Mark? This is really... Are you saying... I probably read this wrong, so it's good that you might correct me, or maybe I didn't read it wrong. The third party who are manufacturing these transmitters, they are not renting lamppost space from the council, but rather the council is subsidising these companies with...
Of course they are.
Oh, holy shit. So there's there's no payoff for the local taxpayer whatsoever. There's nothing in it for you or for anybody else.
We're paying for it.
Wow, it's being subsidised by the council. Now, how do you know this? I'm asking. I've already done my research on you over the weekend, so I know how you know this. But our listeners will be shouting at me, how does he know this, Richie? How did you find this out? You've been in communication with people on the council.
Yeah,
right?
I've sent the council a FYI. over the last few years,
freedom of information,
getting very, very little back. It's either confidential. I mean, they're secrets. They have a scientist, etc. I mean, I've tried through an FYI, trying to get them to tell me who their partner is. I know who their partner is, by the way. Anyway, I've tried to ask them through an FYI.
Who is the partner?
I'm not going to say here.
Okay.
I'm not going to say. But I know who that partner is. I mean, you've got to remember, these devices are used for 3D mapping. I can 3D map your home. It's actually a radar system. So I can 3D map your home. I can look at you in your bedroom. I can actually monitor you in your home with these transmitters that put on the lighting system outside. I've got the picture. It's a violation of human rights. It breaks every single law under the planet.
And you've gone to these things with the gauge, with the EMF gauge. I've seen the videos, and I am going to tweet links to where people can follow Mark on Twitter, YouTube, because he's put these excellent videos on YouTube. I've been watching them over the weekend in preparation for this conversation, and I will put links out there, but I can't tweet at the moment, but on Facebook and on my own website, so you can see these videos. What Mark is telling us here today, he's demonstrated this physically on video on his YouTube videos. So these things can actually, this is proper Blade Runner, planet dystopia, future stuff, Orwellian stuff. These things can take a look at you through the walls of your house. You're totally unaware of it, of course. It's just happening.
Oh yeah, totally unaware. Well, one of the transmitters, we've had 31,000. I think it's about 875 transmitters fitted to every new LED streetlight. It basically turned the whole of Gateshead into a microwave oven. Now, what's quite interesting, we have. And ovens and connotations with ovens, and especially gas ovens, how that panned out. Yeah. And we have one of the largest Orthodox Jew populations outside of Israel in Gateshead.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we do. The current transmitter on these streetlights, it's a 25 milliwatt transmitter. Now the maximum at 200 pound meal. So anybody that's under 14 stone, you're in trouble. The maximum to a 200 pound male is 1 milliwatt. 1 milliwatt. That transmitter has 25 milliwatts. And that's how I know, without having to carry out any significant research project, that any pollinator, any moth, some of them protected, that would fly, that would be attracted to the LED street lamp and got within a couple of meters, that transmitter, that transmission would annihilate them. If anybody looks at the videos, as you've mentioned before, Richie, you'll see that the transmissions that I'm measuring with the meter, they equate to what the manufacturers data. So at distance, I mean, I've measured in a baby's bedroom at some 40 meters, 800 millivolts. That equates to a 25 milliwatt transmitter on the top of that light. That light has no warning. Anyone could be working near it. We have these transmitters at close proximity to people's homes. There's no warnings. Window cleaners, scaffolders, people up in areas where they get close to these transmitters are at significant risk of kidney damage, other types of damage. And that's forgetting about the 5G system. This is just the basic, this is a basic transmitter. This is, forget about its 5G systems capability. We're just talking about the actual emission of radiation here. So
and the problem you have is that sort of organ damage doesn't show up immediately. It takes a bit of time to develop, doesn't it? So it's not going to show immediately when people go for their checkups or whatever. It's going to take time. It's not to say it won't happen. It might very well happen as you're describing it, but it won't be instant. Therefore, the local population won't get any red alerts or they won't get any.
Well, no.
This is the thing.
The nosebleeds.
Well, apart from the nosebleeds,
nosebleeds, neurological disorders, brain fog, and short-term memory loss. I mean, we're talking about leading on to dementia. Massive impact on the economy, by the way. I mean, if we had a chap up a hill, right, sitting in a cave, stroking a white cat with a monocle on, I could understand it. If there was somebody really like that who planned this. But I think this whole thing's come about through ignorance, incompetence, corruption, and maybe somebody sitting up in a cave stroking a white cat. They've opened up the whole country to an attack. This is absolutely outrageous. I mean, 5G is a Trojan horse. It's poor encryption. It's opened up the whole of the critical energy infrastructure because these 5G transmitters talk to your smart meter. Can you imagine just pulling down the whole? And that's not to mention autonomous vehicles. I mean, you take control of an autonomous car. And I mean, this is just...
You can cause carnage.
This is just so badly thought out. I mean, the poor mental health of this country, it's a crippling economic impediment. It's costing the economy £99 billion a year. £99 billion a year. I mean, we just cannot. That's just one issue. This is not to talk about, the other issues, the resonant frequency issues, the increase in energy. I mean, you talk about fires. We all know that Grenfell Tower was an absolute tragedy. However, if I was to tell you that the 3G, 4G devices in that building, including that smart meters, increase the fire risk, so you're basically just pouring microwave radiation energy. You're priming a building for fire. You're priming it because you're basically pouring more energy in. It's like pouring petrol on a fire. And if you speak to any of the first responders, any of the fire brigade who went there, they were absolutely astounded at the ferocity of that fire. I wasn't astounded at all. In fact, I just thought, well, that's just one of the modern day fires that you're going to see from these type of transmission devices. The ubiquitous increase in microwave radiation in homes is going to lead to more of this. This is going to be, we're just going to have to get used to it.
I need to know how Skynet gets built. Who's responsible?
The man most directly responsible is Miles Bennett Dyson.
Who is that?
He's the director of special projects at Cyberdyne Systems Corporation.
Why him?
In a few months, he creates a revolutionary type of microprocessor.
Go on. Then what?
In 3 years, Cyberdyne will become the largest supplier of military computer systems. All stealth bombers are upgraded with Cyberdyne computers, becoming fully unmanned. Afterwards, they fly with a perfect operational record. The Skynet funding bill is passed. The system goes online on August 4th, 1997. Human decisions are removed from strategic defense. Skynet begins to learn at a geometric rate. It becomes self-aware at 2:14 a.m. Eastern Time, August 29th. In a panic, they try to pull the plug.
Skynet fights back.
Yes, it launches its missiles against the targets in Russia.
Why attack Russia? Aren't they our friends now?
Because Skynet knows that the Russian counterattack will eliminate its enemies over here.
Capable of doing so. Russia's record of conducting state-sponsored assassinations, and our assessment that Russia views some defectors as legitimate targets for assassinations, the government has concluded.
This is the Tarasanta. Maybe your computers cannot understand what is the meaning of the Tarasanta. You have to understand what is the meaning of the Tarasanta.
Come with me if you want to live.
This is the sacred code. This is the Tarasanta. Maybe your computers cannot understand what is the meaning of the Tarasanta. You have to understand what is the meaning of the Tarasanta.
للمطربين عن الطعام لإخواننا الأسرى احنا معكم. بضرب هالمرة بحاول امسك عيوني اربطها احرمها زيهم مثلهم. ارفع راسك يا اخوي ما تكون نعامي زي من تناسى. الامانة السلام الضمير القيادة الخشوع الصمود الحلم بالوئام التطلع للامام التحدي الوقوف صف التصدي ضد العنف الشجاعة البسالة الارواح النبيلة العدالة الاباء الغضب الفداء العقاب توحيد القلب الحجر السكن الكلاشينكوف الشروق شوف صفاء الصور الهواء الغذاء القضبان العذاب العصيان هات لي هات التضحية الثبات الصلابة التضامن التعاضد العزيمة الشباب الفخر التاريخ الملاحم العبر الجدران الرسم الأرقام على القبر القتال القيود بالسرور الوضوح بالطريق ثائر حتى النصر الشموخ الإرادة الأبية لمع الخاوية للحرية.
This is the Tarasanta. Maybe your computers cannot understand what is the meaning of the Tarasanta.
عارف ايش يعني تمنع حالك من شي لازمك لا تكمل. ليش؟ عشان الغير يعيش. سجل يا التاريخ انا مش عارف اتحرك بس غيري قادر. سجل يا الاسير اقسم لك لو شايفهم لذبحهم بسناني انتو اقوى. اكسروا الدفاع بالهجوم تذكروا الطابون. اقتل السجن بالقهر لصبرك من المحيط للخليج. اسف عارف ما فيش ذكر بوجهك لا كنا معكم انتو الاحرار واحنا اللي تعفانا تصوار. السجن علينا صدت بالجولة الحاسمة لعبة لسه ما انتهت والثائر امعاءه تخزقت مش مستسلم. مصافرات لاستهجان الجمهور عمره ما بترحم. خايفين من الجمرك فليسقط خايفين من اللي بيحكي فليصمت. الصمت يطقطق جبهته من الخجل منهم. العر عليكم ايش اللي مانع حكامنا يحكوا اعلنوها فلتسقط الاقنعة.
This is the sacred code. This is the Tarasanta. Maybe your computers cannot understand what is the meaning of the Tarasanta.
احملوا المسؤولية جرأوا لو مرة. اعلنوا انكوا واحد ما تكبلونا اكتر. الياسر والياسين مش مسامحين. خلي في بالك لعلمك بقيمك لقلمك بسلمك بنضمك بقهرك بنتفك. مجرد بواقي قد خضرنا حساب بنكي بدون رصيد صرتوا عنا. انا معارض لمصطلح كل من غزة ورام الله. تعبنا والله تعبناهاش بطلعنا اقتصدنا كاتب فحدود. كأنت عذرة تقتل عذريتها كيف تعود. الأطرش بالزفة انهلك اكتفى منكو اللي لسه باللفة. يحلم يموت ولا يعيش حضركو جادي لسه فيه تنجن. استدفه الجدل بتموت أسير العزة عريهم غصب عنهم. المسد عناقهم الأسد بعيونهم. انت هم الخراف كون لحالك أفضل ما تكون بين قطيع من التبعية. سير يا أسير بجانبك أسير. القصة مش خاوية القصة مش خاوية القصة مش خاوية.
This is the sacred code. This is the Tarasanta. Maybe your computers cannot understand what is the meaning of the Tarasanta. You have to understand what is the meaning of the Tarasanta. This is our holy code.